What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so we got some more lawfare coming from Democrats and the left in this country, and it is getting outright absurd. But before we get into the news article, I've got a video to show you guys. It's just something to keep top of mind as we're going through the news, y'all. Check this out.
DOJ helps us with that. I would say DOJ is, man, got a pile of work to do, because as you can see, all these court challenges that happen at the district level, Supreme Court challenges, DOJ has to go out and defend. The more these liberals can keep us tied up in court, you know, the less work we can actually get done. And so that's their game. They want to bankrupt us. They want to spend more and more money, tie up our lawyers, so that we can't be out there doing good work for people.
Well, this is they're referring to as a judicial coup.
Correct.
You have more universal injunctions on the Trump administration than all other administrations. About 40% of all universal injunctions ever issued under the Donald Trump first term, and now I believe it's at 17. And this is unconstitutional.
It is, and what I would say is that the President Trump anticipated this. If you look at the hell he went through the last several years, he anticipated that he would be back in court fighting to get the kind of things done in this country we needed to put it back on its foundation. So they knew it. I just don't think that we understood, or I didn't understand, how weak the liberals' arguments would be, but they would still argue them. And that they would still have people sitting on a bench that we used to call the honorable, that we just can't even find a recognition of that in how they're conducting the business and how they're perverting the benches.
To stress the absurdity of some of these universal injunctions, when the president said that those suffering from gender dysphoria and displaying symptoms are barred from service, a judge issued a nationwide declaration that the military must allow all. And so this meant that restrictions under the DSM-5 for enlistment were voided for that period, which is, I mean, the statement then people say, this means that a schizophrenic individual under the same guidelines is now admitted to the military, but we can't do that.
Okay, so that's wild, isn't it? 40% of all. That's not just, you know, all in the past 10 years or all, you know, in the past decade, right? Two decades, whatever it may be. That's all ever in history in the United States. 40% have been imposed on the Trump administration. That is absurd. Now, you might make the argument, oh, but the Trump administration's doing a bunch of illegal stuff. Well, no, when you look at it, because most of those injunctions get overturned eventually. And the Supreme Court has time and time again been siding with the administration. They did it not only in this term, but in his last term as well. And that was before we had the conservative majority on the Supreme Court. Now, isn't that fascinating, y'all? But let's get into the news right quick, because the entitlement, folks, the entitlement from some of these people will blow your freaking mind. Two major law firms urge judges to permanently block Trump's executive orders. Permanently block these. Wow. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, these must be some bad executive orders, right? Not so much. Well, as you know around here, you know, everything is not as it seems all the time when we're reading out Associated Press news articles, because they don't like to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You know, and then sometimes they kind of hint around at what the truth may be, and you got to kind of divulge that for yourself sometimes, or do a little bit of research to figure out what's really going on. Let's get into it, though. Two major law firms asked separate judges Wednesday to permanently block President Donald Trump's executive orders that were meant to punish them and harm their business operations. The firms, Perkins Coie and WilmerHale, say the orders imposed in March are unconstitutional assaults on their legal profession that threaten their relationships with clients and retaliate against them based on either their past legal representations or their association with particular attorneys whom Trump perceives as his adversaries. Funny that is, right? Ooh, he perceives these no-name law firms as his adversaries. Why would he perceive a law firm as an adversary? He's a businessman and currently the President of the United States. Weird, isn't it? Courts last month temporarily halted enforcement of key provisions of both orders, but the firms asked in court Wednesday for the edicts to be struck down in their entirety and for judges to issue rulings in their favor. That's no lie. So without court proceedings or without anything else going on, they went to the judges and say, you must rule in our favor and strike these down. They're unconstitutional. And they, I guess, just like I said, the entitlement is absurd on this. They think that they get a judge, they get a favor from a judge just because they say it's unconstitutional. You think the judge is going to rule in your favor? Well, some of them might, as a matter of fact, because we have so many activists out there. But, they're not going to be able to get away with that. A lot of these judges, they are finding they are not in alignment with the Constitution currently, because once again, like with the Abrego Garcia nonsense, that old court proceeding, as a matter of fact, like with the with the Alien Enemies Act. I know you get those two conflated all the time, but the Supreme Court told the judge Boasberg, as a matter of fact, that he had no jurisdiction whatsoever to make his ruling. As a matter of fact, that should have been done in North Texas, I believe. Yeah. Said he should not have. And he's still trying to move forward with contempt proceedings, even though the Supreme Court said that he has no business ruling in this case. It's absurd, y'all. It really is. It's getting wild out there, folks. Another firm, Jenner and Block, is scheduled to make similar arguments next week, and a fourth, Sussman Godfrey, is set to make its case next month. The entire executive order is retaliatory. Dana Butswinnikas, a lawyer who presented arguments on behalf of Perkins Coie, told a judge. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell, sound familiar to anybody out there, did not immediately rule on the firm's request, but she repeatedly expressed deep unease over the executive order, signaling that she was inclined to side with Perkins Coie. She grilled a Justice Department lawyer over the government's plan to suspend the security clearances of lawyers at the firm and asked him to respond to the suggestion that the blacklisting of disfavored law firms was similar to the Red Scare panic over communism decades ago. So, all of this sounds like it's wild. Sounds like Donald Trump is retaliating in some sort of a way against private law firms, right? That's what it sounds like. Holy crap, he must be doing something unconstitutional. But guess what these executive orders do, folks? You're going to be shocked at this one. Guess what they do? They revoke security clearances from anybody in that law firm. Yeah, that's it. And pretty much tries to ban DEI policies, which Donald Trump is trying to do because that violates law. Yes, as a matter of fact, it does. It is discriminatory against a certain group, and you can't do that under the 1965 Civil Rights Act. As a matter of fact, that's what it is. Revoking security clearances. Imagine this. Somebody allowing you to come in to a secure facility, and then, the CEO, you get a new CEO or something like that, right? And then he doesn't want you to be able to come into that facility anymore, and you suing this company to keep your security clearance. That's what's going on here. Asking them to permanently block this. It's absurd. It's retaliatory, right? No. I'm sorry. This has to do with national security, folks. Right, they don't want these law firms to have security clearances to be able to get into federal buildings just on a whim. It's absurd, y'all, and they think it's retaliatory. Hey, it might be, but I do believe, regardless of the intent, the administration has every right to revoke a security clearance for whatever reason that they want. And I'm sorry, that's just not retaliatory. That is entitlement from these people. Gotta love it, though. And she pressed him to explain why the Trump administration was forcing firms to disavow the use of diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations in their hiring practices because it's racist and it violates the Civil Rights Act. That's why. Why does the administration view those three words as dirty? Howell asked. Once again, like I said. Justice Department Attorney Richard Lawson, who is representing the Trump administration in challenges to the executive orders, said the president was within his prerogative to issue the orders, and the government has good basis to be concerned by what he called the unlawful evaluation by law firms striving to reach race and gender targets in their workforce. The spat of executive orders taking aim at some of the country's most elite and prominent law firms are part of a wide-ranging retribution campaign by Trump designed to reshape civil society and extract concessions from perceived adversaries. You love that, huh? That's what it's designed to do. No, he's just trying to make sure that companies in the United States are not violating the 1965 Civil Rights Act. Now, the security clearance is nonsense. That is, once again, regardless of how you may feel about it, that is 100% the prerogative of the administration in power. I'm sorry, you do not get to dictate to the government who gets a security clearance. And that is what they are attempting to do here. Like I said, absurd. Now, the DEI nonsense, this needs to be worked out in court. I believe, as do many, once you look into how DEI operates, right, that to me violates the 1965 Civil Rights Act because, once again, it's discriminatory, mostly against white people, but it's still discriminatory. It discriminates. Now, what they claim DEI is, oh, it's just, diversity. We want to make sure we have enough minorities, with our hiring practices or whatever. Equity, to make sure the outcomes are the same for some reason, which would mean that you would have to take from some to make sure others get the same, right? That's what that means. That's communism. And then now, once again, like I said yesterday in my video, every accusation is a confession. They're talking about, oh, this is the Red Scare that we defeated communism. This was something they did in the Soviet Union. That's what equity is, by the way. Equitable and inclusion. Now, the inclusion part, hey, look, I get it. I totally get that one. You want to include everybody? Go right ahead. Sure, fine, whatever on that one. But the other two are intentional and they're meant to discriminate against a specific group. That's it. There's nothing else you can say about that. That's how I feel because that's the end result from what I can see. Just say it. The actions have forced targeted entities, whether law firms or universities, to decide whether to push back and risk further incurring the administration's ire or to agree to concessions in hopes of averting sanctions. Some firms have challenged the orders in court, but others have proactively reached settlements. The executive actions have generally imposed the same sanctions against the targeted firms, including ordering the suspension of security clearances, the termination of federal contracts, and restrictions in access to federal buildings for firm employees. This is what they're raising so much roof about. I don't even know if that's the correct way to implement that phrase, but they're raising the roof. They're gnashing their teeth. They're jumping off of buildings in protest, essentially because they're taking their security clearances and they're canceling contracts, which, what? Are you serious in trying to restrict them from federal buildings? That is totally their prerogative to do so. Once again, like think about it in reverse. How did these people get security clearances? Wasn't it a decision from the federal government to give this to you? For some reason, the contract. Wasn't it the decision of the federal government to say, okay, we're going to give you a contract to do some work for us for whatever? Wasn't that the decision of the federal government? Totally their prerogative to give you this contract. So it's their prerogative to take it away. That's all I'm saying with this. You got to look at it from both angles. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we're trying an authoritarian takeover. Is it though? Is it? Or is Donald Trump trying to revert us back to be in alignment with the Constitution? You could see it however the hell you want to. But if you're going to make an accusation that it's an authoritarian takeover, at least provide some sort of evidence, something. Don't just come into the comments section and say, oh, well, you're just stupid. Because. How about some evidence, please? I'm just saying. Judges had earlier blocked the enforcement of sections related to federal contracts and building access, but not the provisions related to security clearances, because they can't. In court Wednesday, Howell said she was troubled that the administration was putting the cart before the horse by stripping security clearances en masse without first conducting an individualized review of attorneys. She appeared to grow exasperated as Lawson struggled to answer questions about the basic mechanics for implementing the security clearance suspension or the review process for the targeted attorneys. He doesn't have to. I'm sorry, struggled to answer those questions? You mean struggled by saying, yeah, we have our right. It's well within our rights to revoke these. Yeah, we just decided. I mean, once again, think about this in reverse. Didn't they just decide, okay, upon request, mind you, sure. They requested security clearances, so the government went and vetted everybody, made sure everybody had a clean record, blah, 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 and gave them security clearances. Same process, just in reverse. We don't think you deserve security clearances anymore. That's all it takes, folks. That is all it takes. The judge does not have the authority to tell the Trump administration who it can revoke a security clearance from. This is just so absurd, in my opinion. You don't know. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, I skipped one. You can't tell me which agencies are conducting this review, she asked at one point. You don't know whether the firm or the attorney whose security clearance has been suspended has given notice about the timing of the review or whether they will have an ability to object to the review, she said. So what? Doesn't matter, does it? No, it doesn't. Lawson said the administration did not intend for the security clearance suspensions to be a blanket ban, but rather to allow for individualized and granular assessments of attorneys. The administration has invoked potential national security concerns in justifying the executive orders, but Swinscott, I can't pronounce that, I'm sorry, and I'm not going to try. The lawyer representing Perkins Coie said that argument was laughable, given that the attorneys at the law firm whose work was singled out by the order left the practice several years ago. So, once again, more of a reason to revoke their security clearance. These people are insane. Talking about that's laughable. Your argument is laughable, lady. Yes, if they left I'm sorry. They left the law firm. I'm sorry, I know it took me a second to get that out. But if they left the law firm years ago, why do they still have a security clearance through you guys? These people are insane, y'all, really. To me, it sounds more like national insecurity than national security, but Swinkas said. I know, that's a weird name, y'all. I'm sorry. The first law firm action took place in February when Trump suspended the security clearances of attorneys at Covington and Burling, who have provided legal services to special counsel Jack Smith, who investigated the president between his first and second terms and secured 2 indictments that have since been abandoned. Once again, why was Jack Smith working through private law firms? He's supposed to be a special counsel working through the Department of Justice. I'm just saying. And also, come to find out, they just dropped those charges. And I know the excuse is, oh, that's because Donald Trump got elected. Is that the truth, though? Yeah, sure, the DOJ cannot go after the president, the current president, right? Yes, we can all agree on that. However, Donald Trump cannot serve a second term, plus Donald Trump is going to come out of office if these people, and I make this argument before, I've made it before, if these people truly believe that Donald Trump was an insurrectionist trying to coup the government, trying to hoard classified documents that he shouldn't have, if they truly believe that, they would do everything in their power to keep those cases alive. They would not just drop them on a whim just because he got elected. No, they would definitely hold on to those cases. Definitely. I'm sorry. You cannot make me believe those cases did make sense anyway, y'all. Y'all know that. It's fascinating, though. The executive order targeting Perkins Coie singled out the firm's representation of Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential race, and the one against WilmerHale cited the fact that special counsel Robert Mueller, who investigated Trump during his first term over potential ties between Russia and his 2016 campaign, was for years a partner at the firm. So what? What most litigation requires discovery, while most litigation requires discovery to unearth retaliatory motive, the president only proclaims that he is targeting WilmerHale for representing his political opponents in election-related litigation, challenging his immigration enforcement policies, associating with his perceived enemies, including a special counsel appointed by a president's own Justice Department. Right, exactly. So why would he perceive them as enemies when he was, his Justice Department at the time appointed Robert Mueller to investigate this? Don't you think Donald Trump wanted him to investigate it so he could clear his name, for crying out loud, which he did? Why would he go after the perceived enemies when there is no perception of an enemy? These people's logic just never, ever lines up, does it? It's insane. Last month, Paul Weiss cut a deal with the Trump administration that resulted in an executive order against the firm being rescinded. Since then, more than half a dozen other firms have reached agreements with the White House that require them, among other things, to dedicate free legal services to causes the Trump administration says it champions. There you go. They include Scranton, ARPS, Slate, Meager, and Flom, Milbank, Wilkie. Yeah, we don't care about that. Who cares about what law firms they are? I'll leave that up so you guys can read it if you want to. You can read it. I don't know why that came out so abrupt. Didn't come out right, did it? Nope. Sometimes I have a way with words, and that way can be like I can't use them sometimes, but, as is life. But, these judges, to entertain the idea of this is absurd. But, once again, take it back to that video from the beginning. This is all meant, no matter how ridiculous the arguments are, this is all meant to tie up the Trump administration, to keep it from doing the work that you and I voted to have done. By the way, they are just trying. This is lawfare 101, folks, and this is what Democrats do. This is why they're so pissed. They were so mad about about Doge. I mean, they're losing their freaking minds over Doge, like USAID and all that nonsense, because, it appears, I'm going to say allegedly, that's where a lot of their funding comes from. Sure, they've got a lot of rich billionaires and millionaires that, align with the Democratic Party, that donate a lot of money through Act Blue, which, once again, Act Blue is under investigation, and for good freaking reason, right? I think, look, just to be fair, I think the Trump administration should investigate any sort of Republican donation websites or any sort of, PACs and all that stuff. Go through it. Might as well be transparent. Might as well be open and honest about it, right? If you want to exude transparency, if you want to make sure people can trust you, make sure to be transparent. And if you're going to do something to one, do it to all, for crying out loud. But stuff like this, revoking security clearances and canceling contracts, it's nonsense. This is all nonsense. Suing the government because they want to keep a contract for some reason. Like what? Why? Why should we allow you to keep a contract when we don't want your services, for crying out loud? It's insane. These people are insane. They are absurdly insane, and they need to be taught a lesson, folks. We need to get back to civility in this country, y'all. And I think that the steps Donald Trump is taking with, going after DEI, going after this woke agenda nonsense, going after the immigration, going after all this stuff that has been allowed to run amok, especially under the Biden administration. Some of it was done under the Trump administration, too. A lot of this has been going on for decades. It's just been building up, and it finally crescendoed, I guess, at the end of the Biden administration. And it's time for all this to come to an end. Right? We are going down a path of destruction, and Donald Trump says, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to do a 180 turnaround and go back the other way because this is unsustainable. Now, a lot of people argue they don't like Trump, blah, 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 whatever, and then they might cite tariffs and all that. Sure, the tariff stuff is kind of scary. I'm not going to lie about that. I see what he's trying to do, and I'll make those arguments. Do I wholeheartedly agree with those arguments? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm kind of riding the fence on whether these tariffs are going to actually work out. Once again, like I said, I'll make the arguments all the time. And this is something I do. A lot of times I'll try to steel man the other side. Because, I believe, in my opinion, that when you try to argue the other side, argue points that you do not believe, that it helps reaffirm your beliefs, right? Because if you're making all these arguments and you don't believe them, but somehow you can convince yourself that they're right, that means that whatever belief you had, hang on, that needs to be called into question at this point. And it's a good way to keep your mind open about things. It's a good way to not get, so drugged down by partisan politics that you're just a complete partisan hack. At least in my opinion. Y'all let me know if y'all see it a different way, but I try to do this all the time, folks. Like, with the Dave Smith video I done the other day, and I've been telling a lot of people down in the comments section who are trying to come in and say, no, Dave Smith is wrong. Look, I totally get it. I agree. But what I try to do is I try to argue the other side, and it reaffirms my beliefs. Now, I'm not totally with these people because, it seems like from their arguments that they just think that it's okay for Israel just to bomb Gaza. Yeah, I don't see that. Right? We got to invoke some sort of morality up in here. But look, I get rooting out Hamas just blanketly. Yeah, we got to get rid of terrorists, y'all. We cannot live in a society, in a world where terrorists exist without being fought against. In other words, we've got to push back. We've got to let people know that certain behaviors are not okay. That, no, we're not just going to sit back and just get blown up. In other words, no, we're going to get proactive and we're going to come after you, as a matter of fact. So be scared. Be very scared. That's what I would tell terrorists, gang members, all that nonsense. Be very scared. That's it. That's all. That's it. Just be scared, because we will come after you. We will find you, and you will be held to account, as a matter of fact. So, with that being said, I think I'm running long on this one, so we'll go ahead and end it here. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Y'all don't forget, smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here and you got something out of this video. I would greatly appreciate that. I've got memberships, so y'all go ahead, sign up down there, and you get, personalized videos or whatever. Yeah, I'll do that. I don't mind doing that. Personalized videos. There's certain other perks, but you got to go check it out. Sign up, do what you got to do. That would be great, y'all. But I think that's all I got on this one. Y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.